Have you ever known that you needed to make a decision, but somehow months or even years passed and you were still standing in the same place? Maybe you knew the job wasn't right for you anymore, the relationship wasn't right for you anymore, that you really wanted to move somewhere or create something new or take a different path, but that every option seemed to come with a risk. And every choice meant giving something up. And suddenly, instead of moving forward, you find yourself stuck thinking and researching, making lists and pros and cons and looking at all everybody else's opinions, waiting for the moment when you would finally feel completely certain. But what if that moment never comes? And what if certainty is not a requirement for change? What if the ability to move forward comes from something else? I'm Heather Grzych. I'm an author and Ayurvedic practitioner, and I'm the host of the Wisdom of the Body podcast. And I'm so happy that you are here because we're talking about change. And in the last few episodes, we've explored what happens when life changes us. What happens when we don't recognize ourselves anymore? What happens when the life that we imagine doesn't become how we actually live? And today, I want to explore the moment after that realization. So we've already realized that life isn't what we wanted it to be or thought it was going to be. Now we're talking about the moment when you know something needs to change and you have to decide what's coming next. Why is it so hard to make a big life decision? And why does Ayurveda teach us some really cool things about uncertainty? Let's get into it, okay? So one of the reasons that decision-making feels so difficult today is because we have more possibilities available to us than the generation before us. There are thousands and thousands of careers we could pursue, thousands of places we could live, thousands of people that we could meet or date even, right? Thousands of ways that we could reinvent ourselves. And on the surface, this sounds like it's freedom. It sounds great to have all these choices, but possibility has a cost. Every possible future asks something from us. It takes our attention, our imagination, our emotional energy. And eventually, carrying too many possible futures becomes very exhausting for people. And we begin living in a state of maybe I'll leave, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that, maybe I'll start something new, maybe I'll be better, maybe I'll date someone better, maybe something better is around the corner, maybe I just haven't found the right thing yet. And while we're waiting for that perfect answer, life is still happening. Life is still happening all around us, within us. And one of the things I love about Ayurveda is that it gives us a language to understand things that we experience, but they're very difficult to explain. And one of the 5 elements in Ayurveda is space, or akasha. Space is not a negative thing. It's not just, the space in space. It permeates everything. Without space, nothing new could emerge. There'd be no room for it. A seed needs space to grow. A conversation needs pauses. Music needs silence between the notes. Our lungs, they need space in order to fill with air to be able to come into those lungs. Space creates possibility. But too much space without grounding can feel very unsettling for us. So if you think about moments of transition, say you leave a job or you leave a relationship, you move somewhere new, your children leave home. Oh my gosh, I have a 9-year-old. I can't imagine when that's going to happen. Or maybe you finish a major project. Suddenly there's a space where something used to be. The routines are gone. The familiar structures are gone. The future is much less defined than it used to be. All that predictability is gone. And the body can experience that as an ungrounding. You may find yourself overthinking because when we're ungrounded, we get an increase of energy in flowing through our body when we're ungrounded. We can overthink, might have difficulty sleeping or we might feel very scattered. And you may feel like your mind is trying to solve every possible outcome at once. Sometimes we call indecision, but it's actually our response to too much uncertainty. The unknown creates space. When we don't know what's on the other side of something and we don't have that certainty, it creates space. And space asks, what comes next? Now, humans, I love to talk about the difference between humans and plants. Whether plants are conscious is a whole separate conversation. I think it's important to remember something. We are not plants. We are not simply responding to our environment the way the plants do. Yes, the plants have an essence that gets activated by the environment and they grow in a certain way because of how that environment affects them. We are influenced by our environment, but we also have the ability to change it. This is one of the extraordinary things about being human. We have imagination. We can imagine a future that doesn't even exist yet. And we can ask, well, what kind of life do I want to create? Or what kind of person do I want to become? What kind of conditions will help me thrive? Which ones do help me thrive? And which ones will help me thrive in the future? And then we can make choices that move us toward that future. We can change what we consume, not just food. Anything that comes in our senses, including information, we can change that. Media, conversations, relationships, the environments that we spend our times in, the thoughts that we repeat in our minds, or perhaps the circumstances that shape us, they do not completely define us. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of stories. So, one of my favorite stories is from the Ramayana, one of India's great epics, and it's a story of Hanuman. So, Hanuman's this really cool monkey god, right? So, many people know him as this courageous monkey warrior. There's a pose in yoga called Hanumanasana, which is the splits. And it's based on this idea that Hanuman jumped from India to a neighboring island in this story. So, he leapt across the ocean. And when he leapt, he ended up in this split pose. So that's why they call it the Hanumanasana. Now, what I love about the Hanuman story is what happens before the leap. Hanuman and a group of warriors are searching for this girl. They're searching for this lady Sita. She's been taken away from, her people. Eventually they reach a vast ocean and this mission seems impossible. Somebody has to cross it. But Hanuman sits quietly. He doesn't step forward, not because he lacks the ability, but because he had it within him, but he forgot all about it. So he didn't know that he had this amazing ability inside. He forgot about it. Because according to tradition, when Hanuman was young, he possessed this extraordinary strength and energy. And he did some mischievous things when he was young. And these sages placed a blessing upon him that caused him to forget his own powers until someone reminded him. There was an elder who approached him, and he doesn't give Hanuman this power. He just reminds him of what was already there. And he reminds him of his strength and his courage and his capacity. And when Hanuman remembers who he is, he makes the leap. So what I love about this story is that it's not Hanuman becoming something else. He's not transforming into a different being. He doesn't wait until he feels like a different person. And he doesn't wait until he has no fear. He just remembers. There's a remembering of, oh, this is who I am and this is my power. And then he acts. And I wonder how many of us delay making decisions because we don't actually trust ourselves yet. We think, oh, once I know more, I'll decide. Or when I feel more confident, then I'll act. Or when I have more proof, I'll move. But sometimes that confidence, it doesn't come before the action. It comes when you're acting. Sometimes it comes after we've acted. So because we've acted, then we get the confidence. We discover our strength by using it. And I think a lot of people believe that they are afraid of making just the wrong decision. But underneath it, there may be something actually deeper going on. We're afraid of losing control. We want a guarantee. We're not cool with the unknown. We want to know, is this going to work? Will I be happier? Will I regret this? And really, we want to know, am I going to be okay? Will I be okay on the other side of this? But every single meaningful decision is definitely always going to come with some sort of uncertainty. There is no version of life where we get to know the future before we live it. Even if we think we know the future, it always ends up different than we thought it was. Something is always different about it. So the question becomes, Can I trust myself enough to meet whatever happens next? That's really bold. Okay. Let's talk about another story. So this one is from Homer's Odyssey, another one from antiquity, another story from antiquity. So Odysseus and his crew, they have to sail past the island of sirens. Okay. If you've ever heard this term siren. So the sirens are said to have voices that are so beautiful that the sailors cannot resist them. So he's like, ooh, okay, these sailors, they hear some song and they steer toward it, and then they crash and it ruins them. And Odysseus really wants to hear that song, but he also really wants to survive. It's like a temptation. So he creates a plan, and before reaching the island, he tells his crew to tie him tightly to the mast of the ship. And then he gives them an instruction: no matter what happens, no matter what I say, do not untie me. Do not untie me from this mast. And I love this story because Odysseus understands something about human nature. A person making a decision today is not always the same person who will face the temptations of tomorrow. So he doesn't rely only on his willpower. He's like, brings in the reinforcements around him. He's like, hey guys, help me out. He actually creates a structure. He creates some type of commitment and the conditions that will support the person that he wants to be in the future, the person that he wants to become. And I think that this is one of the places where modern culture has it backwards, because we often think that freedom means that we have unlimited options. We think that's great. But sometimes the unlimited options create anxiety. And sometimes commitment is actually what creates freedom, because when we choose, we stop spending all of our energy imagining every other possibility. And that gives us a lot of energy to do that. And this is where I think Ayurveda becomes incredibly practical. Ayurveda, the science of life, what I practice, when there is a lot of space, Ayurveda emphasizes grounding. So creating rhythm, creating stability, creating connection with the body. And because this body actually lives in the present moment here, and the mind can live in 10 possible futures, but the body is always here. And the body is healthy when it's here. So sometimes the most powerful thing that we can do during uncertainty is just to return to very simple things: regular meals, regular sleep, movement, time outside, relationships that nourish us. You know, it's one of the reasons that when someone's very stressed out, they might keep checklists. You know, these types of things are very, very grounding for people. When we realize that we're doing them a lot, it might mean there's a lot of change going on around us and a lot of space going on, or a lot of even that wind element blowing us around, because we really want to ground ourselves. But these practices, they bring us back into our own experience. And grounding, when you ground yourself, some people think that it might be restricting, but it doesn't mean that you're avoiding change. It just means that you're creating enough stability to move through the change with strength and flexibility. So perhaps the question is not, how do I know the perfect decision? Because maybe there actually is no perfect decision. Maybe the question is like, what choice allows me to participate most fully in my own life? Because keeping every option open can feel safe, but eventually seeds have to be planted, paths have to be walked, and life has to be lived. So I want to leave you with a few questions today. So is there a decision that you've been postponing? Or is there a future that you're afraid to choose because it requires letting go of another? And what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for some certainty that may never come? And what would happen if you actually trusted yourself the way that Hanuman had to learn to trust himself, not because you know exactly what's going to happen, because you can't, but because you know you have the capacity to meet what comes. The unknown is always going to contain space where you feel like you're floating and you're not sure where you can grab onto. But space is not only emptiness. Space is possibility. It's exciting. And as human beings, we have the incredible ability to enter that space consciously, to imagine and to choose and to create. And it's very exciting. So don't be stuck. Move forward. Let's do it. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of The Wisdom of the Body. And until next time, I hope you take great care of yourself. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. Visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.